As we start looking at the issue of human trafficking, we want you to think about this question. What is a person worth? Take a few minutes to answer this question on your own. Write a paragraph in the space provided to you, taking into consideration whatever you think should be considered for this question. Now that you've thought about this question, we're going to give you some information regarding the issue of human trafficking in the modern day world. Another name for human trafficking is modern day slavery. So what exactly is modern day slavery? It's any time a person has been recruited, transported, or compelled to work by force, fraud, or coercion. Victims do not have the means to leave of their own will. So modern day slavery is not exactly what we think about when we think of slavery in the United States. It takes on many different forms, and we're going to be examining this. But the biggest thing we need to take away is that these people do not have the ability to do their own thing. They are forced by somebody else in some manner. So typically when we think about slavery, we think of this. Humans selling humans to other people on markets. And we typically think of the African slave trade that took place from the 1500s to the 1800s. But let's take a look at what it looks like today. And here we're going to give you some statistics to enforce that. So I want you to think about this. What do you think the average trafficked person in the 1800s cost? Well, the actual number is $40,000. Now that doesn't seem like a lot, but think about that. In the 1800s, $40,000 would have been a lot of money. Now, let's bring that forward to today. What do you think the average person trafficked today costs? Probably a lot of you are thinking it's several times $40,000. But in actuality, the number of people being trafficked and the cost of that is simply $90. Far lower than what it cost 200 plus years ago. And I bet you a lot of you are surprised by this number. Now, can you think of any reasons why the number would be so much lower today than it was in the 1800s? That's something we want to look at as we start talking about human trafficking. So I'm going to give you some more statistics, and you can fill this out on the handout we've provided you in Google Classroom. Pay attention, as these will come up later. So, an estimated 40.3 million individuals are enslaved in the world today. 50% of them are trapped in debt bondage. And this is a very specific type of human slavery that we will look at as we go through this little unit. 25% of those trafficked are children. So that's about 10 million children. And over 70% are women and girls. So this obviously affects a lot of different people. No region of the world is unaffected. As you can see, it may be worse in certain parts of the world, but there is no country that is not affected. And we'll look at why this is as we go through it. The rate of modern day slavery is highest in Africa, with 7.6 victims for every 1,000 people in the region. Now, as we saw on the map before, Africa wasn't the darkest in terms of color regarding the map, but it was the most per 1,000 people, which is a significant difference. Every single minute, 2 or more children are forced into slavery. So that means that of every minute, 2 more kids are added to that 25% that is enslaved. Trafficking is estimated to be a $150 billion industry affecting 161 countries worldwide. And a little breakdown of that. Almost 2/3 of that comes from sexual exploitation, another $34 billion in construction, mining, manufacturing, and utilities, another $9 billion from agriculture, forestry, and fishing, and another $8 billion from domestic servitude. So it's in lots of different areas, but you can see the biggest area is in sexual exploitation. The United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, reports that across the world there are over 1 million children entering the sex trade every year, and that approximately 30 million children have lost their childhood through exploitation over the past 30 years. Obviously, this is a travesty, and we're going to look at what might be some of the causes of this. The majority of modern slavery victims are between the ages of 18 and 24. We can look and figure out why 18 to 24-year-olds might be the most at risk. What factors might play a part in them being the most highly trafficked group? Obviously, they're not the majority of the world population, but they're a big enough component that it's worth looking into. And of the millions of forced labor victims worldwide, only 14,897 cases of forced labor were prosecuted globally in 2016, with only 9,071 successful convictions, according to the U.S. Department of State. And you might think here in the United States, we've got to be better at this. But as you can see the numbers for a few recent years, the United States hasn't done as much against this as we would hope or we would like. And so enforcement of the laws need to happen everywhere in the world, not just in poorer countries or less developed countries. It has to happen everywhere, including the United States. So these are some interesting statistics that are going to kind of frame our study of human trafficking over the next couple of weeks.